way.
Sorry.
Oh my God! It snuck up on us. How did you do that? You did it on purpose that way. You totally did it. You know what? You did that to deny Sally the box. Sally wanted a box. You did that. You timed that so Sally couldn't have a box. We all saw it. Chris saw it. Tony saw it. Sally.
Every time. Every time.
I deny everything.
You know what? You're a box denier.
About this Russia thing. What? What? Hey, everybody. This is #SPSM. If you're just stumbling into this, this is the Suicide Prevention social media chat. If you're like, wait a minute, back away awkwardly, it's okay, we don't mind, but you could just stay. I'm at Dr. Foreman. I'm one of your friendly moderators. We're so excited to have you here. You should know, if this is one of your first times coming, that there is a concurrent chat on Twitter using #SPSM. You can see it on my little thing on my lower third. We would love to have you comment to the topics we're going to be talking about tonight on social media concurrent with this chat. This is where the chat goes a little meta. This is where we go make full matrix tonight. Nobody goes full matrix, but we are going full matrix, and we're going to be talking about what we used to talk about and what we're going to talk about while we're talking about it. Did you follow all of that?
No.
I didn't either.
Inception.
I'm excited. I know. Is it Inception? I'm excited because we have one of our guests who's a regular member of our community, who's been here since some of our very first chats, who's also now for the first time here via video, and who is also at the IASR conference. Everybody is going to be saying hi to Sally Spencer Thomas, but not yet. We introduced her last, but we're going to be talking about the National Suicide Prevention Week hashtag. We're going to talk about Action Alliance. We're going to talk about Elevate the Convo, and we're going to talk about things that have happened to coordinate and drive up the reach and the metrics of suicide prevention messaging across social media in the last 4 or 5 years. And I'm really excited to have someone who both started with us and who's been a really key player in some of the events this year that really helped accelerate the messaging. But before we do that, Mr. Tony Wood. Tony, say hi to the people.
How's it going, everybody? Tony Wood at ADWWW, back on Twitter tonight because my my login worked finally. I've been locked out. But I'm back in. I am the chair of the board of the American Association of Suicidology, suicidology.org, joined today, as well as COO of Quantify, a software company dedicated to the intersection of mental health and computer science. Check out ourdatahelps.org and donate your data today. Donate your data for mental health research.
And Tony's not telling the group something that he needs to tell the group about. A lot of people don't know this, but Tony's working on a book, Tourism in Topeka.
Yes.
And he's been working on this bit for a while, and I'm a little surprised that you haven't. It's gonna be a coffee table book. Is that not? Tell the fans about your coffee table book, Tourism in Topeka.
Photographs, but it's going to be in the cutout of a cow.
People would
not
buy
full
that.
size. It's going to be scaled, but we're doing it as a project with the convention.
Can I tell you, as a child growing up, I had a toy cow that you could milk.
We all had that.
No, we all didn't. No, I can assure you that.
Speaking of dang meat,
we did.
Dr. Barney Andrews.
What's going on, everybody?
Introduce yourself to the people.
Dr. Bart Andrews from a groovy little crisis center in St. Louis, Missouri, Behavioral Health Response. I'm going to give a big shout out to my agency because we were awarded the greatest community partner as from Youth in Need, which is another great crisis and youth-based organization in the St. Louis area, and being at that was very cool. I'm excited about being on the show. I have been very impressed with Sally Spencer Thomas's work in the social media field and all of the cool stuff that she's done. And if you don't know all of the cool things that she's done, you're going to hear about them tonight because we've got a lot to talk about.
You also have a shout out to Mercy.
I'm gonna give my shout out to Mercy because April was at an event in the Louisiana area. Was it Baton Rouge? Was it Baton Rouge?
It was New Orleans. It was
in New Orleans, which is a lot of people don't know is like right next door to Baton Rouge. Isn't that correct? Like you walk out the door and you're right in Louisiana.
In comparison with St. Louis, yeah.
You're right next door. And there were some folks there who were amazing, who were totally speaking SPSM language. We got to Polo. If you don't know about Polo, Marco Polo, the app Marco Polo, have we done it? We should do a show on Marco Polo.
No, because then they'll have to polo everyone, and I can't keep up with our polos.
No, but you flood us with all of your orchestra polos that we have to watch, like 30 or 40 minutes of orchestra polo.
Shout out to Mercy.
But a shout out to Mercy.
You work with them.
I do. Mercy's doing some amazing things. First of all, Mercy Healthcare in the St. Louis area actually has a zero suicide program. It's the first hospital system in Missouri that's embraced zero suicide system-wide, which is very cool. First hospital system that's creating a support group for survivors, loved ones of people who have survived a suicide attempt or are fighting suicide, which I've gotten to be a really cool part of. And Mercy's doing some amazing stuff with virtual healthcare as well. So Mercy's just rocking it in terms of virtual care and suicide prevention, and they're doing all kinds of amazing stuff. And it sounds like they're doing really good stuff down in the New Orleans and Baton Rouge area, right? So it was amazing to meet those folks.
They had us kind of talk about SPSM and talk about how to use social media and encourage people who are providers to become more engaged with social media in the service of preventing suicides in the region. It's really cool. Bam! And Mr. Chris Maxwell. Chris, introduce yourself to the people.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris Maxwell. I work for the largest national suicide prevention hotline in the country. I also serve on a committee, the Strategic Media Task Force for the American Association of Suicidology. I am really, really excited to hear about the progression of how social media has impacted suicide prevention over the last few years, and especially how Sally has been able to really focus in and make some really powerful events and social media things happen. So thrilled to be here.
And Chris, you have in your work with both the Lifeline and your work with the American Association of Suicidology, you've also attended some meetings with Action Alliance and really helped shape some of the national social media messaging that was done during National Suicide Prevention Week, and even some of the stuff directly linked to in the blog you assisted the Action Alliance with, correct?
Yeah, just real quickly, one of the things that we did, and we'll probably talk about this later, but one of the things that we did for the National Action Alliance September Suicide Prevention campaign was to actually provide Facebook frames for people to use. So it was pretty cool.
Fantastic. Before we go to Sally Spencer Thomas, Bart, Sarah Burr, and Stark wants to know, where's your pocket square, and are you all right?
I've got a pocket square right there. What?
See, it was a stealth square, Stark. Say that 3 times fast. Everyone, I am so excited to welcome for the first time on video, but not the first time to this show. Everybody, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas is here tonight. You've met her before if you've been to any kind of suicide prevention events. You've certainly seen her on social media. You've seen projects she's been involved with like Man Therapy, things that we have talked about before. But this week, we're really going to talk a lot about the project she's been doing the last few months called Elevate the Convo. Sally Spencer Thomas, introduce yourself to the people.
Well, hello. So I'm here in Las Vegas tonight, which sounds really glitzy and glamorous, but not so much because the conference that I'm at, Suicide Research Summit, is in Henderson, which is outside the Strip. And I'm outside of that in a lovely little basement Airbnb. But I'm very happy to be here and really honored to be part of this conversation tonight. Tonight, I think is really our big talk is really about collaboration. I think all of the things that you guys listed is about that. And I think that's been the journey that I've seen to make social media successful. So I want to give a huge shout out to Grace Durbin. I don't know if she's on, has she arrived yet? Because she has been such a great collaborator with me and with SPSM and a number of people. She's what it's all about. She brings an army with her that really helps lift up talking points and tweets and conversations and really does so in a way that's very engaging to other people. So thank you, Grace, for all of that.
And you did an amazing job supporting her, right? So you did an amazing job supporting her. She was actually on one of your panels, and everyone had been trying to get her on a panel, and you actually made it happen.
Well, she and I had been talking a little bit leading up to that, and I asked her if she would, and she said she would, and if I could write her bio, so I did. And then she joined, and she did an amazing job. So I'm very grateful for Grace. So.
And you have been a part of Work with the Action Alliance as well. So you're on some committees with the Action Alliance as well. Can you tell people, I did check with them. They didn't get clearance to participate tonight, but we were very clear that members of the committee do committee work and we can talk about our own experiences, and we're cleared to do that. So you're clear to talk about what you do with Action Alliance.
So for those of you who don't know, I lost my brother to suicide and I'm a psychologist. So when I lost my brother to suicide in 2004, I was working at Regis University. In 2009, I left Regis University and I became the founding executive secretary. Sorry, I couldn't remember my title then. And so I had the incredible privilege of helping stand that up and create all these fun task forces. So it's also been cool to see the Action Alliance go on this amazing journey. The two task forces that I sit on now are the workplace one and the post-vention one. But it was really a thrill to help the National Suicide Prevention Week, what were we, a committee, pull together the broadest collaboration effort that I have seen in suicide prevention so far. We broke down some major silos and I think it was really the leadership of the Action Alliance, maybe in some conversations with some of the other major groups, that pulled together the common theme of be there. It seemed like a lot of the national messaging was around being there for others, and got everybody on board to really work in one direction, which doesn't always happen. So it was really cool to see. And Chris, you were really involved with that. What was your perspective of how that came together?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. By far the most coordinated response for suicide prevention week and month. I mean, it was a elongated campaign. There were planning meetings leading up to it. A lot of lessons learned, a lot of debriefing that happened afterwards, so we can all kind of go back and learn from those. I was excuse me, thrilled to see the list of partners.
Yes, and I think that's so key for all of us.
Yeah,
is to keep that list growing.
And if you check out the blog on spsmchat.com, there's a pretty decent list of some of the big partners that were involved. But I mean, some really, really big partners. So to have that leverage and have those people kind of pushing this in a way that makes it more mainstream was huge.
And then April, you introduced us to Thunderclap. Or I said you introduced us to Thunderclap, which really got us going.
Hannah Moak, remember she did this sort of last year. So we want to talk a little bit about like sort of how this happens, and we want to highlight some of the partner work. So I started working with the Action Alliance just a little bit under a year ago, and one of the reasons is because we just really work hard on SPSM to talk with lots of different types of partners and collaborators, and to think about what are the trends in the social media verse and how would that translate into suicide prevention. And so one of the things that we really did was we just imported some or I got to bring to the table things that SPS brought to the table. And I think, Sally, you really hit the nose on the head that National Suicide Prevention Week and hashtag Elevate the Convo are very much collaboration efforts, and collabs are sort of the molecular bonds of social media, right? Like people have relationships with each other, channels have relationships, different accounts have relationships, and it's not about getting the biggest email list ever. It is about forming relationships with lots of folks and with influencers in a lot of different spaces. And that's really the theme of what's happened with Elevate the Combo and with NSPW. Tell us more about, who wants to talk about that list of partners?
Well, I'll start because it actually goes back to the Action Alliance formation, because everybody in the suicide prevention community, well, either they thought it was a horrible idea or they wanted to be on the executive committee. There was no in between. So we immediately got flooded with all these applications of the same people who'd been talking to each other for 15 years. And I was like, no, that's not what this is about. This is a public-private partnership where we're trying to bring in people who have not talked to each other for 20 or 15 years, new voices with new constituencies and new freaking ideas about how we can do this differently. And it's still a fight. It's still a fight to keep us out of the table because we all still want to be in it. But that was always the spirit of the thing, was to, bring the construction workers in, bring the first responders in, other types of roles and the media and viewpoints that were never represented usually in our conversations.
And that also meant things like, let's make sure that the lived experience community, which has definitely a lot of influencers, and in my experience, the lived experience community are the savviest social media messengers. Usually they're the most familiar with how to use the tools. And so you, especially with Elevate the Convo, had a lot of folks with lived experience and a lot of folks with their own networks who then were showing up at Twitter chats.
Yeah, that's right. So I was actually just maybe flash back onto the Action Alliance beginning again, because right away we had 13 task forces, which was really impossible to manage. And I was working with the Carson J. Spencer Foundation at the time. We just got this huge grant, and I was leaving the Action Alliance, and I said, before I leave, I want to make sure we've got a suicide attempt survivor and a suicide loss survivor task force each set up. And I got fought against because there were so many darn task forces, and they were like, oh, then we're going to have this task force and that task force. But those are the last two that I helped get up before I went out the door. And I'm so glad I did, because they both groups have done some pretty amazing things in creating some national guidelines for how we can do our work better. So it's cool.
Absolutely. And you've been around, I have to say, a lot longer than me. So you're definitely going to have a perspective on it that I just won't be able to bring.
When did you come into the fold?
For Action Alliance, that was really just the last year, because and it's really largely because it's the nature of social media that there's when we do a show like SPSM where we have, listen, that's my cat. If everybody's wondering what that thumping is, she's losing her mind in the window behind us. But what happens is that we bring expertise in from so many different places, and so we just have access to a lot of great ideas. Not because, Bart and Chris and Tony are very smart, but I usually just have to sort of absorb things as I go. So Man Therapy, you were one of our first guests on SPSM, and right. It was like to talk about Man Therapy, because I just thought it was so cool and so fun, and I still do. I got to introduce the U.S. Men's Shed folks to Man Therapy. It's just a cool thing. So this year, the thing that we started talking about with Action Alliance was the importance of getting everybody to use one tag. And I know I've become a tag Nazi. Can you say Nazi like that, like soup Nazi, or is that now because of the alt-right? It's is that a bad thing? Can I not say that? I don't know what the rules are with that word anymore. But I will tell you,
because I say no.
Okay, so then I'll say I became like a tag gremlin.
There you go.
Gremlins are okay. And so a lot about explaining to people how tags work. Now, this isn't because I'm so brilliant. Tony Wood, tell us a little bit about how you were lecturing me about tags. Remember back in the day when we wanted a new tag for everything?
I just politely directed Dr. Foreman to the resources regarding organizing one's social media with hashtags.
And I remember I was driving in the car and you were yelling at me, is what I remember. And I almost crashed into a mailbox.
I don't remember it that way. I remember me. I looked up from my literary journal that I get in the mail, and I said, Dr. Foreman, what are you talking? Oh, you must be talking about organizing your social media using hashtags. And we had a nice polite exchange about it, and then we arrived at our destination.
What was the advice that you gave? Because this was really important, and it's one of those things that we really need to repeat out loud because it was part of the success of this year.
Keep it short, keep it simple.
Short,
simple, super important. And that's number one. Number two is use multiple hashtags, even though it's annoying, because you need discoverability. Unfortunately, that's a jargon term, but you need to be able to search and find what you're looking for inside of a subset, so you end up with this organizational problem. So if you want to find everything at, say, AAS 17, which was the hashtag for the 2017 AAS conference, then you can find everything at AAS 17. If you're just interested in, innovation conference or loss survivors or whatever, you go AAS 17, hashtag AAS 17, second hashtag loss. And then you can see just the loss conference. Well, that's awful handy when you're trying to find things, and your interest areas don't. Your consumer doesn't care so much about every aspect of your event. They're interested in some segment of it.
So, and that was like when I made the shift from hashtags are these cute little titles that sort of define a discrete event to discoverability. So think like a library. Think about like if you guys, or if you're old like me and there was no internet, if you want to go into a library and find something, you kind of had to know how the decimal system worked. You had to know where like the big sections were that things were, and then what each sort of, and so that you could sort of walk to a section that you needed to use, or you could sort of sift through a card catalog. And so in a lot of ways, those social media tags are like that. So one of the things that I recommend that you start recommending to us and people is use hashtag suicide for anyone who's just trying to find all the tweets about suicide, to make sure that prevention messages and expert messages get mixed into there, as opposed to just what someone from the general public is tweeting. People are very reluctant to tag suicide.
That's kind of advanced food, but it is important. If you want to promote your interest, whatever that might be, you want to try to find the mainstream hashtags that are associated with that. And, you do need to educate yourself a little bit about the social norms regarding those hashtags before you just dump on somebody's hashtag. So I'd be careful about that. You could get some backlash. So you could use some advice or spend some time with it a little bit before you jump in. But if you pick a mainstream hashtag like suicide, millions and millions and millions of hits, millions and millions and millions of uses of suicide all over the place, and they are on every possible subject related to that particular word. So from jokes to outreach,
suicide bombing,
suicide bombers, murder suicides, all kinds of stuff, and it can be totally random.
So
suicide
then
by chocolate,
like narrow down.
People
yeah. So after we tag suicide, then we want to narrow down. SPSM is a tag that we use with like sort of the expert to expert community, and that's really become associated with that. Then we talked about with Action Alliance, like what tag to use and why. And we talked about announcing this on the show. We talked about, as a lot of people did, in addition to like hashtag be there, make sure that you put hashtag NSPW, so that the be there content that might come from the United States, that might come from VA or DOD or from Lifeline was in with all of the content. So if somebody wanted to look at all the kinds of prevention messaging from 1 month, that it would be this big unified stream. And then there would be a couple of secondary hashtags, not a million, but a couple, so that you could sort of slightly filter down if you wanted to. Right, Tony?
I think what you're trying to do is access the larger audience in an appropriate way, which is the punchline to my long-winded explanation that Dr. Foreman kindly cut off in the middle. And and that is that there's a giant audience out there. Only some subset of the giant audience is interested in your particular topic, but you still want to access that bigger audience. You don't necessarily want to keep it locked in a room. So part of what you're trying to do with your strategy is access that larger ecosystem of folks. What do you think, Bart Andrews?
I have a point. Well, we're trying to
go ahead. He's unmuting himself. Go ahead.
So I have a sweet hashtag I want to put out there, but it's not short, and that's the one that's happening this weekend, which is Science to Stop Suicide, and the 2 is the number 2.
Yeah,
it's way too long, but the audience is amazing. So today, why I'm here is this is an international conference of some of the top suicide researchers from around the world. So I will be tweeting from that hashtag all weekend, and so will a few other people. So you can chime in and see what we're talking about.
I'll shamelessly plug that Dr. Glenn Coppersmith, my boss and co-founder of Quantify, will be speaking at the conference, as well as a lot of our friends from many corners of suicide research. Bart Andrews.
I can say a lot about hashtags. So one of the things that I learned, and I learned about using hashtags early in my SPSM career, thanks to all the guidance and mentoring. It really helps us organize. It really helps with metrics tracking. I think of all the things, when you have a registered hashtag like SPSM, or if you're running a conference, you can register your hashtag with Simpler. And it really does let you track numbers and get a sense. I'll say this, I learned later that the cool kids don't like hashtags on Twitter. And in fact,
I did just read that.
Yeah, and so the cool kids, that you'll notice there's a lot of accounts that never use hashtags. Hashtags are kind of considered to be...
Are they dank tags?
They are definitely not dank. No, hashtags are almost like if you were trying to find the opposite of being dank, a hashtag in your tweet would, unless you're using it ironically, I guess, like... but so hashtags aren't cool. The other thing that's really interesting is that just since I started on Twitter in 2014, the search function on Twitter is a lot more sophisticated than it used to be. So it used to be that really the only way you could really search Twitter was by hashtags, and now the word search is just as good as the hashtag search by a mark. So so things are changing. So here's some interesting things. One, Twitter, if you're listening, and I know you're listening, Twitter, because you shut down the SPSM account. So they've ramped up the algorithms to look for the things that we do with live tweeting. This is going to be an issue because they see that as robot-like or algorithmic behavior when we're retweeting everything. So they've shut down our Twitter account. So I know you're listening. Twitter, here's some secrets.
Already again?
Yeah, I mean, they actually locked.
20 minutes.
No, they locked us. It's not even jail. They actually locked us. So somebody with the phone number is going to have to go in there and go through the CAPTCHA. If you don't know about the CAPTCHA, we're going to have to do the CAPTCHA. What Twitter should do, rather than giving everybody 280 characters, we should be able to tag things, and the tag not actually be in your text in the actual tweet. There's a way that they can layer, and other platforms do this, where the tag is like a graphic that's off to the side. It's actually not a part of the text of your tweet, which would make it a lot easier, because then you can put a lot of different connections, because there's a lot of things that we do that intersect with a lot of different things, and then you could layer on all kinds of markers and links that wouldn't actually interrupt the flow or use up your character limit, and it would be a fine thing to do, but that's not the way that Twitter works. Twitter sometimes is almost like designing itself to make sure that people hate Twitter all the time. I don't know if anybody's ever noticed that, but those of us that tweet a lot.
Grace Durbin says use multiple hashtags. Rule of thumb 3: a topic, a brand, and one free one. She says don't get tag happy.
3, yep, 3 is a lot.
Now, when we use the hashtag NSPW in September, there actually were some great metrics on that. We're not going to read through all of them. I'm going to actually disappear a little bit and go get some data for the chat. Just to review some of the things, but do go to spsm.com. That'll have this week's blog on there, and you can read some of the different partners and some of the different analytics, and I'm going to feature them. But Elevate the Combo, you started doing chats. Was it this summer, or was it earlier than that, Sally?
No, a year ago, September. So World Suicide Prevention Day, I think, was my first 2016.
Oh my goodness, I'm so embarrassed.
Yeah. No, that's fine. So I had been on SPSM for a while. I got super inspired, and I talked to my board at the time and said, what do you think? Could I do a Twitter chat? And they said yes. And so I just kind of followed what I had seen being done with SPSM, but my goals were slightly different. So while this is like the suicide prevention expert kind of inner circle talk about how we can up our game, I really wanted to kind of engage new and needed partners. So my very first one was with a group of first responders, because this is part of the world I live in with man therapy and so forth. And they're always very interesting, and it's a very different type of conversation that I have with them. However, they didn't really understand Twitter very well, and they therefore didn't have very many followers. So it's kind of a disaster, but a very good first out of the gate experience to learn a lot from.
If you curate it, it doesn't matter how many people are there that minute.
This is so true. This is so true. And they were very excited. So instead of doing video, I'm on the phone with folks to kind of talk them through stuff. And that also creates a community that moves forward with stuff. So that first responder community has stayed connected, and really all the chats that I've done together, the people meet new people from it, and they stay connected. So we've been trying to engage in a lot of different types of audiences. There's a fatherhood advocacy audience called Dad Summit 2.0. That's really cool. And they've been really interested in man therapy. The last couple ones have been around reducing access to lethal means. But our most successful one by far was the one we did on National Suicide Prevention Week, where we talked about safe and effective messaging and what does that mean and all this stuff. And we had kind of all the major, almost every single major national association participating.
Yes.
And everybody was retweeting each other. It was super exciting. And I also I captured my metrics a little different than you, April, because my tweet everybody starts getting ramped up with promotional things about a week out. So I count those. because people bring in the handles of all their partners.
So really quickly, the advice is whatever you do, use the same ruler and measure the same period of time. So you don't have to do it the same. It's just as long as you explain what you're measuring, when you're measuring it, and they do it the same, so you can do apples to apples on a product. So go ahead and explain to people what and when you measure with Elevate the Combo when they look at your analytics.
So I usually do 5 days prior and 1 day after, or 6 days prior, 1 day after, about a week, because people start ramping up during the week before. But it really just, it maxes out the day before and the day after. That's what I'm finding. I'm still getting used to it. And actually the metrics have changed drastically since I've gotten kind of a formula down a little bit of how to do it better to reach more people. And that formula is bringing together a lot of different things on one chat. So I usually try to have someone who's an excellent connector, who's got a lot of constituents, and this is what they do. This is what they do almost every day, is they're getting out their message to a very large audience. I usually have someone from a research perspective on there, at least one or two, if not more people with a lived experience. Sometimes they're wearing multiple hats. And then somebody from the mental health community that's chiming in. Sometimes now I'm adding caretakers in. So all of these different folks coming together, and usually they bring their networks with them. We do a lot of prep, as you know, April, because you've been on one, and Bart too. Actually, Bart was on the early days. So I do a lot more prep with folks beforehand, so that on the night they're just dropping stuff in, and then they're focusing a lot more on retweeting and engaging with the participants and with the other panelists. And I think the National Suicide Prevention Week, I think if I do my metrics about a week, we had 27 million impressions, which was by far the largest.
Yes. So we tweeted out, if you guys look at the SPSM chat tweets for this, and if you go to the blog, there is a wonderful graphic that shows what the analytics are that Sally Spitzer-Thomas measured. You should know for SPSM, we measure the hour during and 15 minutes past for, whatever, when people are still sort of chatting past the end of the hour. And we're very specific about why we only measure that hour. Sally Spitzer-Thomas is measuring organizational engagement with that tag. So when she invites guests, there are a lot of, so that you can sort of show messages that are shared out, because that's part of the work product that is intentionally produced like for the whole week. Because when you do like one chat a month, yes? Do I have that right? I do,
yeah. And we actually start prepping the day of the chat for the next one. So you'll see the last tweet that I put out for the chat is a graphic of next month's chat. So that means I've already lined up the panels, we already have our topic, and we're already out promoting it. So it takes over a full month for me to get a chat up and going. Who knew it was ever going to be so complicated? But I love it. It's really super fun. It's super fun for me to bring in these folks. Like one of my goals this year was to connect the addiction recovery community to the suicide prevention community. Hello. Yeah. We have similar goals. We share a lot of the same people, but we never work together. We don't even understand each other's language or what we're trying to do. So that worked out really well. And that was really fun to see, a number of folks come together for that.
And, I think one of the other sort of lessons learned is that if you want to do partnerships, SPSM, we do several hours of work, and we sort of, split it up between people so that it's sort of doable to do a weekly show, which is, with the real and everything else, it's a lot, but we've sort of got a little structure in place. If you want to involve a lot of national partners, one of the great lessons learned, is that sometimes it takes clearance to get those messages done. That while you may have the person who's doing the social media, they may have several layers of approval. They've got to run that by everybody. And so one of the reasons that Sally was really special, that you got that Elevate the Combo chat with all of those national partners during National Suicide Prevention Month, was that you did work ahead and worked with them in the sort of approval situation that they've got to deal with. And that's not a small thing. And that's part of the reason why it really hadn't been done before. I mean, we're slapping knowledge on you about tags and about behaving collaboratively, but it's not like every national partner didn't know that. It takes leadership and it takes a lot of organization, right?
Oh yeah, but I think everybody's got the willingness to do it. Sometimes everyone just needs a thing to do. They need a project to rally around. That's not a big chunk to chew off. I think that's why Twitter chats are a perfect forum for getting people around a table, because it's, you know, it's not months and months of commitment and time and so forth. And it's a ton of fun. Like, it's also an opportunity where we can drop in a little humor. Thank you, April, Bart, Tony, Chris. You know, you guys are funny and you're fun, and you've allowed that to be in this space, and we can model that and show people, like, this is a great way to hang out with each other, learn about each other, and discuss something that's important and daunting, but do so in a way that's, you know, memorable and engaging. So thanks for paving the road for that.
Oh, that's so generous. Thank you. I want to talk a little bit pitch to a little bit to Chris Maxwell, because the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline was one of the partners. Chris is not speaking on behalf of them, but you did do some stuff with AAS, and you did do some stuff for the Action Alliance in terms of getting some of those Facebook tools and other things together. Can you talk a little bit about like how that played in, and how projects like that happened?
Yeah. So initially, in some of the very beginning conversations with Action Alliance, they were trying to figure out some different materials, some different pieces that would make a larger campaign. And again, going back to Tony's point, make them accessible to people that may not know as much about suicide prevention or may not be in this field particularly. And so one of the things that I had learned from Hannah Moak last year was the Snapchat filters. And we had started looking at some of those. Those didn't seem to be appropriate for this kind of campaign because they're locked down geographically and they cost a lot of money. But Facebook, in its attempt to compete with those, has created the Facebook frames, so that and a tool that they provide where you can actually go on and make your own. And so I said, hey, why don't we create one for the Action Alliance that can be customized per organization? So you have a Facebook frame that allows you to provide it to your followers, provide it as part of the campaign. But then if you want to take it and put in your own logo or put in your own hashtag or whatever, you can also do that. So it's customizable per organization. And so it just took a little bit of time to design it and send it to Action Alliance, get it approved, tweak it, all that kind of stuff. And then we were ready to go. They had it up on their website with everything else. And this is something that, you know, once it's submitted through each organization, you just search the Facebook frames option on your profile picture. And if you tag it with the appropriate keywords, it pops up for each organization. So I know American Association of Suicidology had one. Obviously, Action Alliance had one. A few other people had one. And it included those shared hashtags, NSPW. Some of them had to be there. Some of them had the information about their specific organization. So it was just an extra way to bring in more people and make it more accessible. So yeah, it was a cool little experiment. Like the one thing that I realized very early on was that evaluation was going to be really hard. So trying to track how many people actually downloaded each frame that's very limited. So outside of anecdotal experiences of saying like, oh, I saw a few people using it, it's kind of hard to track that at this time. So maybe in a year it'll be different.
I have another tip on what what you were just saying, Chris, reminded me of another thing that I think has helped make the Elevate the Convo Twitter chat more engaging. This is another lesson learned, and a shout out to Bart for teaching me about Canva. It's the graphics that people really resonate and tend to retweet all the time. So one of the things I do in prepping the panelists for the chat is to put together as many visual pieces as they possibly can. Whether that's images of themselves doing something related to their topic or new graphics that they make to demonstrate the points of their tweets. And those always do so well. But again, it takes that little bit of prep time before, so they're not spending 10 of their minutes of the chat creating something. They just drop them in. But now I know, like Bart and I at conferences sometimes will be side by side creating Canva graphics, and he's such a wizard. He's such a master at it. He just pops them out and they're gorgeous. So thank you for.
Are we allowed to use the word wizard? Is that a banned word now? I don't know how this.
Oh no!
I think that you can use it. It's fine.
Is it Harry Potter or Green? I never. So I think one of the good lessons about this with Chris, or what Sally's really referencing, is that some of these tools change, or some of these trends change, and I don't know that the whole field needs to learn how to do it, but what you really want is that there's somebody in an organization, and if you're doing collabs, where someone knows a skill, and when they show up to committee work, you know, they figure out how to do it in a way that the other organizations can sort of pick up the ball and run with it very easily. So there's, who is that talented person in the network, and how can they make some content that everybody can pick up and run with? Bart, you were saying?
So I think one of the things Sally hit on a key point, and I learned this in doing some research, that having a visual component to your tweet improves clickability of anywhere from 25 to 50%, right? People will, if you can tell something with an image, it's much more attractive to people. They'll spend more time looking at it. More densely worded tweets are, unless, this is the truth, unless you are a celebrity, unless you're a celebrity account and people are hanging on every word, you really need something to grab people's attention. And so images really, really help with that. And if you're interested, when you put on a tweet, you actually have, there's something called analytics on your tweet actually built in, that you can click on that where it says your number of likes and the number of retweets. There's a little button you click on, it'll actually tell you some interesting details about your tweet. And I learned this at a conference a couple years ago. One here, and if you didn't know this, I'm going to say this because I say this all the time. Mental health professionals, I'm sorry, we're the worst social media folks on the flipping planet. Horrible, horrible. We do better on Facebook because social media, mental health professionals think they're more protected on Facebook. I have a secret. You're not. It's just insane. You are just as exposed on Facebook, if not more so, than you are on Twitter. But particularly on Twitter, mental health professionals are really, really scared to engage with content. But what you can do is you can look and see a lot of people are looking and viewing your tweet, and they're interacting with your tweet. They're engaging with their tweet. They're just not liking it, and they're not retweeting it, right? So there's lots of things I think that didn't get much traction. And then when I click on the analytics, it's like, oh my God, that thing had like 500 views. But a lot of the folks viewing it are folks that are afraid to RT because they don't understand, or they're nervous about it, right? So there's lots of things in images. I've noticed when I use a good image with a tweet, the number of clicks I get on that tweet are so much higher than if I just use text only. So using graphics, images are really important.
And I would say,
tip. Go ahead.
Find the cool people's images and retweet images that are sticky. Like if you were like me, where you know what people, you have a sense for what's going to catch, but you're not like Bart. Like there are some of you that are going to be like me. So like find and look for the stuff that really engages you and give it some love and give it some press. Chris Maxwell is great at certain things. Bart's great at certain things. Sally's great at certain things. And then we have Tony. And so of course, like you want to you want to look for what other people's strengths are and promote the kinds of content that you really connect with that are others. Go ahead, Sally.
Oh, I was just going to say, if you really want something retweeted about 150 times, quote Dr. April Foreman. That one little graphic that I did about your quote from the S Word movie. Oh my gosh, that's gotten retweeted so many times. So just quote her, and you're good to go.
Oh my God! Can I tell you? I'm gonna get choked up. That when you did that, you did that's very sweet. Maxwell's done a few. Bart's done a few. Tony, like people have done that. Like I would say, take somebody, like when you hear something that somebody does that really gets you, quote other people, like do the things that inspire you. It comes out in your work. Create content that other people can share and elevate your partner's content. I finally got the list because I have so many sort of windows open when we're doing these live shows, so it took a little bit, but I mean, this list of partners is 50 plus names long. It includes different departments of Veterans Affairs, U.S. Health and Human Services, Rocky Mountain Myrick, Jed Foundation, Trevor Project, the Saddleback Church, Recovery International, Rheingold, Mental Health America, Live Through This, you know, the Lifeline, George Washington University, AFSP, AAS, Action Alliance's Faith Communities Task Force, right? And not only did it include the partners on the list, but it also included their hashtags that they like to use or their social media accounts so that people could link, you know, get linked to and share other partners' content. And so you could find out who was using the hashtag. So when you've got 50, like the NFL. Think about how huge the NFL, they were one of the partners. Think about how huge their readership and audience is. So when they're using your same hashtag and somebody clicks on that, then the NFL becomes a vehicle to share stuff from FSP and AAS and the Action Alliance and SAMHSA and that is the power of everybody doing something collaboratively. That's why Sally is saying it really was the biggest year in terms of unified messaging.
So that's a great list, but I would also say that 80% of that list is still us talking to ourselves. I mean, they're big influential partners coming in, but it's still pretty much our same circle, same crew. So for example,
good news, we can do more.
We can, yes. And I was just thinking, like the last, the reducing access to lethal means chat that I did, we didn't have huge exposure, but I tried so hard to bring in people who don't come into this conversation. So we had a number of, we had a firing range come on. We had a construction guy come on. Just people who aren't really in our circles very much. And I think that's, it was hard because to interact, everybody's talking different languages and so forth. But I think that's the direction to head in, is who needs to be in the conversation, who isn't in the conversation yet.
Grace Durbin does a really great job of engaging a lot of folks with lived experience who have a lot of, have a lot of skin in the game about coming up with solutions for suicide, because these are folks who have survived perhaps suicide attempt or who live with chronic suicidality, and they want good suicide prevention messaging, good infrastructure, and good science to come up with solutions, right? And so there are a lot of people who have a stake in this, in solving this problem, and would gladly contribute to the conversation and share the message. They're just waiting to be invited, right?
Yes.
Sally, if you could list dream invitations, like of people that you would love. I know last week we talked about finding out that the social media pornography community is like sort of the bathroom stall of social media, like probably a place where, not everybody would want to go in their head, but is a great place to put great suicide prevention resources. And we found some interesting news items about that. And so that maybe we need to be reaching out, making sure and providing good suicide prevention resources in those communities where people might be anonymously talking about very personal things and do. I mean, it hit the news. Where would be some organizations or some communities that you're like, we would love to reach out to them and do a collab with them?
So, I was super thrilled that the NFL participated in National Suicide Prevention Week. But let's get all of the major sports franchises participating all the time. Canada, for example, their NHL teams. Oh, great! They do mental health nights all the time up in Canada, and we could do that a lot more here. They have tremendous reach right into the demographics that are super high risk for suicide. So that would be one. The other one that I think has a lot of promise is like the primary care audience. On the reducing access to lethal means chat, we had an MD on, Dr. Glenn Waters, who's talking about how he's a maxillofacial surgeon and how his profession is largely to blame for the opiate crisis that we have. You think about all of the drugs you get when you have dental problems, and how he can reduce pain in a different way by reducing access to opiates, but helping people with their pain management in a different way. I think if we can interface more with the medical community, that would also be a dream come true for getting our message into new places that would be more effective, perhaps.
If we can get 50 partners, can we get 500 partners?
Yes.
Hashtag goals. Stretch goals.
Yes.
That are not Anne Marie's. If you guys caught Anne Marie's yoga tweets earlier tonight, speaking of stretch goals, but it would be really, really great to get 500 partners and have a lot of them not be people from the traditional suicide prevention community. Tony, you have something to say.
I caught Bart having something to say. That's why I'm making.
Yeah. So, and actually, I saw the Texas suicide prevention folks comment on this. So the idea that they try to use the hashtag suicide in their tweets. They like to use suicide prevention, right? Doesn't that sound so much better and safer and warmer and optimistic? Here's the problem we have, and I understand that. Here's the problem we have. Somebody did some metric analysis, I want to say 18 months ago, that looked at the Twitter community and the suicide prevention folks and the folks at risk of suicide, and the two groups aren't overlapping at all, right?
Wow.
Because the way that we talk in suicide, I'm going to just, screw it. We are way too safe. We're way too guarded. We're too polished, and we're too tight. To be honest, the people who are at risk of suicide see this shit, and they're like, these guys sound like a bunch of stiffs and a bunch of phonies. And I've gotten feedback like that on my Twitter feed before, right? We are often just shooting out tweets at each other, at other people in the suicide prevention community. And look, there's a purpose in that, and there's utility. There's goodness there. Don't get me wrong. It's a wonderful thing. But we're not hitting the folks that we also want to be hitting, which is the folks that are either have someone in their life they're worried about or are fighting suicide themselves. And that's because the way that we tweet is so friggin' sterile, and we're afraid to do things like put suicide in the tweet. Just put the suicide hashtag in the tweet.
Preach,
right?
Brother.
Right?
Absolutely.
So
it's a lot of jargon, Bart.
It's just one of those things. So I think that the hard part, and actually Tom Cruise, we love Tom Cruise, was talking about this. It's really, really hard for for professionals to engage on social media. There's so much fear out there. And part of it is knowing how to set limits and have a good limits. And let me tell you, I think those are vital. But you've also got to be willing to take risks and do things and engage as a normal person. And so if you look at somebody's Twitter feed, and this is,
you're engaging as a normal person, Bart.
I think I'm normal. I mean, what are you saying, April? Please. No, I think it's time. Let's go. Tell me what you.
Are you a normie, Bart?
Are we going to break into a section? Are we going to break into Mindhunters here? What's going on?
Is Bart a normcore? Is Bart hardcore normcore?
Are you a normie, Bart?
I'm a normie, but I want to be dank, Chris.
You're this close.
Hey, Chris, can you talk about your tweets just now with Canva?
What about it? Canva? They're great. They are great at engagement. Every time that we've tagged them, they jump on and make sure to say thank you. But so what I did there was really strategic, and that not only did I tag them with our SPSM hashtag as always, but also made sure to include a thank you for helping suicide prevention as a field, because that's what we are doing, right? And that should make them feel good about helping out the field. So it was nice to see that they engaged with that.
So
I've got
that's another strategy that you can use when people do things that contribute or improve your messaging. When people do things that you admire or respect or are grateful for, say thank you and do it publicly. It is a wonderful thing. It's a thing that I need to, sort of consciously do more. Sally, you're next.
Oh, I'm still thinking about who are the dream partners. Here's a dream partner we absolutely have to engage. Movember. Oh my gosh, where are they? They're participating in Australia and Canada, but we need them here. We need them in the United States. So everybody tweet at Movember and tell them how much we love them and how much we need them for men's mental health and suicide prevention, because they would be an amazing partner.
That's actually really fair. I could grow a mustache again.
I know, it'd be fun.
We may have to, maybe next year, maybe we should reach out to them and do stick-on mustaches for the whole month.
Yes.
We could totally do that. I know you guys are all shocked, SPSM, but I have a few mustaches. I think that's a great idea. Thank you, Sally. That's a really good idea. Any other ideas or thoughts? Are we seeing any thoughts in the Twitter feed? Tweet out things that you think could grow the NSPW hashtag for 2018 even bigger than it was this year.
We need to get a big celebrity to do a song or a rap about suicide prevention.
Oh, like Logic?
No. Let's. Okay. So, one of the lessons that came out of the debriefing session that it really resonated with me, and something that we've been talking to a couple of people about media engagement overall, and some of their experience as journalists and working in those kinds of fields. And one of the things that we've heard over and over again is that we need to start earlier. And not only do we need to start earlier for Suicide Prevention Week and month, but we need to make it an all year long thing. So start taking away the the fact that we're putting this week and this month on a pedestal and start making it a year-long campaign. That's really important, but I think the planning aspect needs to happen earlier too. And it allows us to start using that hashtag and building up, kind of like, Sally, what you do for your chats. You start a week beforehand and start kind of, or even more, start building up that impact so that when it hits, there's a real gravity to it.
So should someone take the NSPW flag up Kilimanjaro? Shout out to Misha. Shout out to Misha, who has taken the SPSM flag up to new heights. But I mean, we're talking about doing a year-long campaign that sort of culminates in some sort of big event, right? So
I got an idea.
Things that are exciting and have plot.
Everybody tweets in the bathroom. We should do selfies with the SPSM flag in the bathroom.
Oh God!
I think we already do that. Where's Desiree stage?
And then like different states, different bathrooms. I mean, it could be a whole like.
This is just convenient. No, this is just convenient for you, Bart. That's all this is.
Mm-hmm. A little self-indulgent.
All right. No, I'm telling you, I think it would just take off. I think it'd be
could.
Why a bathroom? So you'd have to have something sort of clever about it, right?
Flush suicide down the toilet. Let's turn.
That is weird, but kind of funny. I don't know if I'm really into it or like I don't know how I feel. Like it's probably good.
Can we turn final thoughts into just a brainstorming session?
We could, because we got 5 minutes left.
Oh.
Okay. There was some content we didn't get to. So folks, we've been talking about doing this with, related to our Action Alliance service for a little while. I just want to really encourage you, because there is literally so much content related to what the Action Alliance helped sort of organize, that I want you to please do go to spsmchat.com and do look at some of that. You can look at things like the Action Alliance's partners, over 50 of them. You can look at the metrics that happened at NSPW 2017. You can look at how the thunderclap went. You can look at the metrics. You can look at what some of the messaging was. You can see Chris's wonderful Facebook frames, but you can look at what happened. So sort of final thoughts before we start brainstorming, and it's brainstorming, go with us. But is like, look how far this has come from 2013, when our commentary on Suicide Prevention Week was that the social media was silent, that there was very, very little of it. That was 2013. That was what our chat was saying, was like, dude, why aren't we doing this? And then 2017 is great triumph, the most organization in our messages our field's ever had. So what could 2018 be? Who wants to chime in next? Free for all.
2018 could be great. Don't you think, Sally Spencer Thomas?
I think it could be amazing. And how about we engage other forms of social media? Snapchat, Instagram. Maybe we do some different types of video things. But again, prepping people around the same message, around maybe a similar format. How do we bring those new needed partners in, but using the different social media platforms?
Grace Durbin says, be shameless in our tagging because we stand for a great cause. Why can't we make the theme of 2018 be suicide prevention? Hashtag shameless. Speaking of breaking stigma, I like that. Hashtag shameless. That's my fave. Other brainstorm ideas.
That's pretty good. I like that one right there. That was.
Is it dank?
Yeah, shameless and be less afraid.
Shameless, be less afraid. Dank memes for suicide prevention.
No.
All right. Hey, you know what? I'm just trying. I'm brainstorming. Look, you just violated one of the rules of brainstorming. When somebody's brainstorming and they give an idea, the last thing you're supposed to do is go, "Oh my God, that's horrible." And then
everybody, this is Bart Andrews, the traffic cop of brainstorming. Other ideas for National Suicide Prevention Week 2018. What would you guys like to see? We want to. Let's 500 partners, and let's most of them not be from the field of suicide prevention. Hashtag shameless. Let's make it great. Let's make suicide prevention great again. I don't know if we should do that, but someone may already own that.
Hashtag too soon.
Other ones. Me Too was already taken. By the way, speaking of powerful campaigns that sort of took off organically, hashtag Me Too, it seems as if that would be a wonderful mental health campaign. And of course, we don't want to in any way shortchange the folks who've survived sexual assault and abuse in various ways, and who've been really great doing media about it. It sort of came out organically. But what are some of the things that we could do for lived experience and for lost survivors for them to be able to say, yes, suicide affected me too? Any thoughts?
Is hashtag no fear taken? It's probably taken.
It's probably taken. I think I had that shirt in 1997.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you, well, okay, so Marshman actually had something that, like, it's such a simple concept. And we've kind of been talking about this a little bit, but, like, honestly, how do we make it easier for mental health professionals to interact on social media? How can we actually make it easier? What do we need to provide people? Sally, you were talking about this. What do we need to do to educate people? I think that's something that we could totally, like, as a community, brainstorm long-term on. How do we provide this to the people that need to be using it?
Good thing you brought that up, because Bart and April will be coming to Colorado to teach all of the Colorado mental health providers how to engage with technology and be not afraid. And so, yeah, I think
I already bought fun sneakers. I've got fun sneakers in the closet to wear to that.
Yes.
Just saying.
I will not be wearing fun sneakers. I can promise you that there will be no fun sneakers on my feet.
I think they just need role models, right? Just like everything else. You two are role models. You're both mental health providers, and you're really, really very savvy in this space. And so people just need to know it's possible. I think it's whoever brought it down to the privacy issue earlier. I think that's the fear. Like somehow people's privacy is going to get all blown out of the water.
So a very fancy suicidologist who I love and adore said, Dr. Foreman, sometimes I get the impression you don't think, if somebody's not on Twitter, you don't think they're anybody. And I don't know that that's necessarily true. And I was like, oh, that's not what we intended. If you're very important, find a lack to do it for you. But I will say that there's a piece about social media, which is like, how can we help everybody recognize it's a skill? And if it is not your skill, then make friends with someone who can help you so that your content translates. Because Sally, one of your lessons is that the way that you unlocked all this wonderful content engagement was by coaching and supporting people who hadn't done, that kind of Twitter chat before, right? And SPSM, like we have a format where we just sort of pop the guest on, right?
Yeah, so I have like a web-page tutorial where people could read it. I've got little videos they can watch if they don't understand it. We can practice. We can practice beforehand just to make sure they get it, because that search, the hashtag, and that search bar thing confuses people every time. So,
Grace Durbin says people are already sharing. The question is, are we listening? I love that. It's National Suicide Prevention Week. Are we listening?
Oh, nice.
That's good. That's sticky. I like that. Can somebody Canva that? People are already sharing about their experiences of surviving suicide. It's not getting people to speak up. It's getting us to listen.
And they are, and what you'll see, a lot of these folks have small accounts, right? So you've got a lot of lived experience out there. They've got smaller accounts, so people aren't seeing them, right? Which is another hard thing about Twitter. It's really hard for people to be seen on Twitter, and it can be really intimidating to be out there on Twitter, particularly when you're a smaller account. So ways to boost the signal of people who are trying to get their story out, I think, is a really important strategy. I think Grace has hit on something there.
Someone told me that Shameless may be taken by a TV show, but I like Shameless AF. Not just because my name's April Foreman.
It's not like SPSM has ever, let somebody else using a hashtag get in the way of them using a hashtag. If I know
the Dutch autism advocacy people.
We're so sorry.
No,
we're sorry.
They're not autism advocacy people. It's some kind of supply and control. It's like some kind of industrial. SPSM is like
we pretty much stamped them out entirely, and I apologize. This is SPSM history. Originally, the SPSM hashtag had this tiny little number of people on it from the Netherlands.
The Netherlands
turned out to be, it was all in Dutch, but it was autism advocacy and like caregiver stuff. Yeah, and in Dutch apparently it works somehow. But SPSM kind of just wiped them right out, so they had to move on and go find something else in Dutch. And so,
we are 3 minutes over. And so we need to wrap up so that people who are bailing the chat. I will say there are several people still tweeting really great ideas, like people doing the one science tweet hashtag. Is there one suicide prevention tweet thing? There are several different great ideas. Please do tweet these. Please do curate. I will be curating your ideas. If you'll tweet over the next 15 minutes, I will make sure that those ideas get some consideration. So if you want to possibly help with some of the brainstorming for what could be done in 2018 to expand the effectiveness of suicide prevention social media during National Suicide Prevention Month and Week, or in the year leading up, lay it on us. Everybody, it's been another hour. We're here for your ideas. We are so excited. We will be covering net neutrality in 2 weeks right before the vote. So if we are working on getting educated enough, we'll be inviting Bo Pinkham back. We're also still looking for a social game to play the Sunday after Thanksgiving. Keep the ideas coming, everybody. Have a great week. Hashtag SPSM.
Hashtag out of here.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.